Hello and thanks for joining us here on France 24 for Beyond Business with me, Tom Burgess-Watson. Today we're talking about the World Trade Organization's 156th member, Russia. That's a country with many economic advantages and which is set to benefit greatly from its WTO membership, but ranked 143rd in the world by Transparency International. Alongside Uganda and Nigeria, Russia has a reputation for corruption that's proving hard to shake off. Well, before we begin our discussion, we're going to examine one rather high-profile example, the story of a whistleblowing lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, who died in a Russian prison 3 years back, leaving behind him unanswered and uncomfortable questions about the shady side to doing business in Russia. A France 24 team reports.
Sergei Magnitsky's mother regards her son's grave in contemplation. The human rights lawyer died on November the 16th, 2009 in a Moscow prison, beaten to death by his jailers.
The lawyer talked to the doctor. I couldn't do it. He confirmed it was real. We were all shocked. And I still can't believe it.
The photographs speak for themselves. Magnitsky paid the ultimate price for his part in the economic war between the Russian administration and his client, the American investment fund Hermitage, which provided the pictures. France 24 went to London in July to meet Magnitsky's boss, Bill Browder. It all began 7 years ago when he was declared persona non grata in Russia.
I discovered massive corruption in the companies that I was investing in and exposed the corruption through the international media. As a result of that, I was expelled from the country in 2005 by the Russian government. I was declared a threat to national security.
Browder regained some of the money that was left in Russia, though he still harbored concern for his 3 Moscow-based firms. Rightly so. In February 2007, the hammer fell.
The Russian police raided my offices in Moscow, seized all of our documents, and then used those documents to fraudulently steal our companies.
It wasn't long before Hermitage's 3 Russian businesses found themselves with new owners. They claimed the companies hadn't earned as much as the former boss said and claimed a $230 million rebate from the revenue service. The sleight of hand was over in 48 hours. The money was transferred to a Moscow account in the name of the new owners. That was when Browder engaged Magnitsky's services. The lawyer was true to his reputation and fast got to work.
Sergei then discovered that the fraud was conducted by members of the government, members of the Russian police, and organized criminals.
Magnitsky's findings were startling. He was attacking an extremely powerful entity, which struck back in November 2008.
The same police officers who he testified against came to his home at 8 in the morning in front of his wife and 2 children, arrested him, put him in pretrial detention, and then started to torture him to get him to withdraw his testimony.
But Magnitsky wouldn't let go, refusing to drop his allegations. When he was transferred to Moscow's high-security Butyrka prison, his health was already failing. He was refused medical aid.
But instead of treating him when he arrived at that prison, they put him in an isolation cell, handcuffed him to a bed, and then 8 riot guards with rubber batons beat him until he died on November 16, 2009. He was 37 years old.
Browder's accusing the Russian state of murder. Thanks to the evidence turned up by Magnitsky, he was able to put together a list of 60 people implicated in the affair. They included members of the Interior Ministry, the tax services, and the FSB, the successor organization to the Soviet-era KGB. His work's finally borne fruit. The US Congress passed the Magnitsky Act in 2011, a law that prevented those 60 people from entering US territory and seized their assets.
There's now an initiative which will touch these people right where it counts the most, which is their ability to travel and to keep their money and to spend their money outside of Russia.
Several other nations have joined the effort too. Canadian, British, Italian and Swedish parliaments have all passed laws against corruption and in support of human rights in Russia, acknowledging the deceased lawyer's work.
Well, for more, I'm joined here in the studio by Eva Slotoffski, who is an economist at Coface Worldwide Credit Insurance. Thank you very much indeed for coming in to talk to us. As we just saw in that report there, a cloak and dagger tale. Is Russia's reputation there, its slightly shady reputation for corruption, a fair one?
Well, yes. I mean, if you look at the position of Russia in many of the classifications we have, it's certainly not a very well-ranked country. And the thing is that on many aspects of governance, the things have deteriorated lately, clearly. You talked about corruption, which is one thing, but we have also to talk about the lack of transparency, for example, of corporates. It's very difficult to know what's the real financial situation of a corporate. It's very difficult to know who owns a company. Clearly in Russia. The rule of law also is very complicated in Russia, how the law is applied. If you go to an arbitrage court in Russia, whether you will gain a subject, that's also very, very problematic issues now.
From what you're saying, it sounds as though matters are actually getting worse, not better. Aren't the authorities in Russia doing anything to try to improve the reputation of their country and make it a more attractive place for foreign investors?
Well, despite all these problems, first, Russia does attract a lot of foreign direct investment because it's a very dynamic economy, first of all. Secondly, I think what's happening now in Russia is that the question of the rule of law or the question of the corruption is part of the debate. First, former President Medvedev, it was a priority for him. Secondly, you see that in the demonstration, the people talk a lot about demands for dealing with corruption. So it is clearly now part of the debate, and people really want to fix it.
And do you feel that they're likely to have any success? I mean, it's one thing to have the desire to fix it, but what chance of success is there if corruption and a lack of transparency is as endemic as you say it is?
Well, the difficulty for Russia is that it's a very oil-oriented economy. And when you have oil and gas, it's very usually associated with large corruption and problems of governance generally in many countries like Venezuela or others of these types of countries. But what I think is that, Russia has no choice. The oil bonanza is vanishing. There is a big issue for the manufacturing sector. Manufacturing sector needs investment, needs credit, and for that you need transparency, you need good governance. So I think that Russia has no choice to perform better in terms of business climate.
Russia is now a member of the WTO. What's that likely to bring with it in terms of benefits to Russia? And secondly, is WTO membership likely to do anything to address those problems of a lack of transparency and those problems of corruption?
I think the good thing for the WTO accession will concern the service sector, which is banks, insurance, telecoms. It will gain for more competition. It will improve efficiency. You think that you will have new players, foreign players, progressively. That's a good thing for so far some sectors that haven't been very productive and very efficient. The problem will be on the manufacturing sector. You know that Russia produces a lot of manufacturing goods, like cars, for example, and it suffers from a very difficult problems of competitiveness, of quality competitiveness. And on that side, the openness will be a difficult thing. And this is why, by the way, Russia has negotiated very, very long period of transition to be able to protect again for a long time its manufacturing sector, and especially its automotive sector.
And what about the rest of the EU? The EU is Russia's third largest trading partner. Presumably WTO membership is going to bring spin-off benefits to the rest of the EU.
Absolutely. Russia is a fantastic market because first it has consumers that are very dynamic. So it already attracted a lot of consumer good foreign investors. With the WTO, of course, the restrictions that are on some sectors will vanish. And this is very good for the EU. Nevertheless, there are a lot of subjects of difficulties because being a very large gas supplier to the EU, there are a lot of questions on Gazprom, which are also making this relationship very strained from time to time. But at the same time, these are partners that are linked forever, so they have, in a way, to deal with each other.
So clearly, plenty still to be done there in Russia. Thank you very much indeed to my guest today, Eva Slotoffski, an economist at Coface Worldwide Credit Insurance. And thanks to you for watching Beyond Business. Do stay tuned to France 24.